Welcome to this week's edition of the Tiger Men's Lacrosse Report. I'm your host, Spiro Marikas, along with the head coach of the Tigers, Sean Nadlin. And, Coach, a mixed week this week as the Tigers defeat UMBC on Friday night at Johnny Unitas Stadium, and then on Tuesday, falling to Loyola 17-13 at Ridley. So, what do you take good out of those two games, and what do you take not so good out of those two games?
Wasn't a ton of good, even though we won at UMBC. We had a strong third quarter, all right, which we need to have. We weren't playing well in the first half. Made a couple minor adjustments that I think allowed possessions to go our way, and then we were really efficient, with those possessions. Scoring with those possessions, playing complementary lacrosse in that third quarter, being able to win face-offs, get goals on the board, capitalize that allow us to tie it up, gain the lead, and kind of keep the lead, even though we didn't really do much in the fourth quarter. We had enough of a lead. We're playing decent enough defense to secure that win against UMBC. With Loyola, the good was for how poorly we played in the first half and kind of lack of awareness, and I just felt like we were trailing. Obviously, we were trailing in the score, but just trailing their pace of play, tracking the ball, being able to get those. We showed a lot of fight. We showed a lot of fight at the end of the second quarter, coming out of halftime through that second half. We still didn't play clean. We were not playing good lacrosse. We were playing a little bit better, but we showed a lot of fight, continuing to try to claw back in that game, which in the first half was very much out of our hands.
Did the weather create any of the sloppiness on Tuesday night at Ridley?
Unless it, got between our ears, and then that's what, created, our poor play, because I felt like that's where our breakdown was. It was just kind of mentally and physically we weren't given the effort that our program requires. And I know the guys are more accountable to that and compete harder, and they're digging in more to each other, and then being able to bring more out of each other in practice to make sure that the compete level is always at our best. And the X's and O's, the execution, you're gonna hopefully do really well. You're gonna have some mishaps, but the standard in which we compete is always at a maximum.
Now, through the first four games, Kai Lopez had been phenomenal at the face-off circle. He had problems against Loyola. Was it just the matchup that created those difficulties?
Yeah, he mentioned that the guy was just quicker than him, last night, and he struggled with it a little bit. Tried to throw some counters in there, and they did a good job. He did it. Kai was decent. He just wasn't winning them clean like he had been in the past.
He got better as the game went on.
Yeah, a little bit.
I guess.
A little bit. He was able to be better, as the ball got away from the X. He wasn't necessarily controlling it out. And our wings kind of sharpened up a little bit. So he still gave us a good amount. It wasn't as controlling as we've seen in the past. But it was great to see, our face-off unit. Miles came in there and competed a little bit. But Austin Welch, who had come back from injury from last year, been very competitive throughout practices, got in there and then gave us a little bit of a spark, when we needed it later in that third quarter and into the fourth, with some possessions and just a little bit of juice. We got it to 13-10 and just, couldn't kind of keep stacking those plays, and then they went on a run that we couldn't stop.
We have to talk about the performance by Mikey against Loyola. 4 goals, 5 assists, career high in assists and career high in points. You've watched him for 4 years now. Does he still do things that you say to yourself, wow, how'd he do that?
He was definitely feeling it. To the point where you probably took a couple opportunities that maybe you don't want him to take, but when you're having kind of a performance a night like that, it's like you're willing to, as a coach, you're willing to allow that, that leash to lengthen a little bit. He's a terrific talent, athlete, lacrosse player, and really competitor. So, that's the beauty of Mikey, is that you're gonna, you're really gonna get his best all the time out there, and he'll do things that, you're just like, wow, that was pretty impressive. It was great to see him kind of change up, where he tried a couple things, a couple finishes against UMBC with the backhander going high to high, he switched it up. He learned from the previous game and went 5-hole, with the goalie and was able to get a goal off of it. So again, his maturity continues to evolve.
And again, you're watching that every day in practice. So
Yeah.
I guess when game time comes, you're not overly shocked, but I'm sure there's still times when you say, wow.
It's fun. It's always fun to see, the game at such a high level. And Mikey's definitely there. But he makes everybody around him better because they have to continue to raise their level of play to play with him and against him, in practice. And it's neat to see that. And it's neat to see, him get, I don't want to say humbled, but guys playing better against him, and them gaining that confidence and then knowing that obviously he's a pretty good player, and if I can do well against him, I'm
And after
kinda
last
doing the right
night's
thing.
performance, he is now third on the Tigers' all-time points list behind Bob Grebe Sr. and Glenn Smith. So he's got a shot to keep moving up the charts.
Great.
And anyway, all right, this week, Virginia down in Charlottesville, and the Cavaliers year in and year out, they're a blue blood. They've had some struggles this year. When you see them on tape, what do you see from the Cavaliers?
Not much different than what you normally see. Very talented, very athletic group. They're going to be aggressive all over the field. They're going to 10-man ride you. Their attack is very aggressive. Their poles will get upfield. They got some good talent off the wings of face-offs that they want to be aggressive with as well. So, again, that's something that, that's just kind of who they are and how they like to swing games. I feel like they've struggled a little bit in goal at times and defensively early on in the season. But that's how you kind of learn as a program, and you kind of keep coming through. So, but again, they got talent all over the field. They're good and strong. They've definitely played at a high level, but also shown some susceptibility. So, looking forward to hopefully taking advantage of that.
All right, so the Tigers and the Cavaliers, Saturday, 6 o'clock. It'll be on the ACC network. We hope you'll tune in to watch that. So for the head coach of the Tigers, Sean Nadlin, I'm Spiro Marikas. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of the Tiger Men's Lacrosse Report.